So, first of all, welcome to the show. Welcome to the new Ken Matthews report.
Yeah, I'm thrilled to be on the show, Graham.
And people who are just tuning in, this is Pennsylvania Congressman Scott Perry, Chairman of the Congressional Freedom Caucus. And what a week it's been. I have never been more excited about politics over the last several weeks. And Friday night, you were there. I was watching it. To me, that's how it's supposed to work. Everybody there, everybody on the floor, everybody having a say, emotion, debate, and then it looks like just over the weekend, it appears that we are all in a stronger position.
That's exactly right, Ken. Look, we told leadership, we've been telling them for years, like, we can either fight at the beginning of this thing and figure it out, or we can wait to the end, and have the thing derailed. We'd rather not do that. But as long as you keep jamming these things down our throats, we're going to have heartburn with them. So it'd be better to discuss it up front. Look, Ken, you know the story because I've talked to you, and for your audience, so they know, I love Ken Matthews. He's awesome. He's one of the only people in the media with courage to really talk about the important things.
Thank you.
And Ken knows me a little bit. Look, I take the high road. I don't make it personal. It's not, but it is business, and it's the business of saving the republic. Mm-hmm. I kind of saw where we were headed, right? Republicans were in the most favorable political environment in a generation in this election cycle. So I was pretty confident we could win the majority. But I will tell you, Ken, and you know this, I didn't think we were being very inspiring to people. I think people were voting for us just because the other side was so bad, right? That's not inspiring. That's like, all right, I got a binary choice. I'll choose the lesser of the two evils. But I went to our leadership last summer and I said, we have an opportunity to change things around here. We can't just keep doing the same things under the same conditions with the same people and get a different outcome, right? Albert Einstein described that as insanity. Mm-hmm. And I will tell you, Ken, when I went to leadership last summer, they patted me on the head and they dismissed me. And
I remember that. I remember that.
I went all through the fall. I kept going to them with proposals. And I said, look, I don't have all the good ideas. If you got good ideas, let's hear them. And they patted me on the head and they dismissed me. And you know why they did that, Ken? Because they could. They figured they were going to have a 240-seat majority and they could just continue to ignore and marginalize and dismiss people and viewpoints that were irrelevant to them. But on election, on November 3rd, we didn't win this huge majority. We barely look. It took weeks to figure it out, right? And so what that is, quite honestly, is a leverage point. And look, I've known Kevin McCarthy since we were in Young Republicans together. Mm-hmm. And I'm not a never Kevin guy. He's got his problems like we all do. But as long as we could get to the package of changes, right? Like, I could support anybody. I would support Ken Matthews for speaker if he would agree to these changes, right? But the guy would not agree to the changes. And even though he knew he didn't have the votes to get there, he kept just pushing and pushing back, resisting every single one. Easy ones that almost every single Republican now is out there saying, these are great changes. But during that period of time, not interested, because, there's a quote by Frederick Douglass that says that power concedes nothing without a demand, always has and always will. So that's the power. It's not going to give up any of itself unless you force it to. And so we went to, we negotiated literally right up to the last minute. So I took an offer to Kevin McCarthy on Monday night. That's January 2nd. And I said, this will get you to 218. He looked at it. He shook his head. He stood up and shook my hand. And he said, you're not serious. And he walked out. And I said, okay, well, here we go.
Well, he knows you're serious now.
Yeah, I think that's what it was. We had my colleagues out there on social media and stuff saying, oh, they're going to blink. Well, I don't know, who thought we were going to blink. We've been through this before, and we're pretty, these aren't people that are saying, oh, I will vote for you if you give me a committee spot. I will vote for you if you take me on this trip.
Well, I think that's, to me, that was the biggest. And I reviewed it because I watched it all Friday night. I watched it unfold. It was like a 15-round prize fight.
Yeah.
And I loved it. I loved it because that's how it should work. In fact, I heard Congresswoman Boebert say she had a little message yesterday. I played part of it on my report yesterday, and she said, you know, people are just not used to seeing it work like it's supposed to work. That's how it's supposed to work. That's why you have rounds of voting, so everybody gets heard. And what I've seen in the package and the quote concessions, you know, the Democrats they're all frisky, like they had a victory from this. First of all, I think the concessions are better for pretty much every American. I don't see any narcissist ego garbage in there. Like you get a leather chair and you get to smoke in your office, John Boehner.
Right.
No, I don't see any of that garbage. What I see is practical stuff that most of the leftist media is ignoring, like who doesn't want a 72-hour bill review?
Right.
Who doesn't want the ability to remove someone that's screwing up? So, you know, I said last week, can you take, and this is my quote, not yours, can you take a lapdog lobbyist or a rhino like a Kevin McCarthy and bargain with him to the point where you give him an opportunity to redeem himself and prove he can do the job, he can bring people together, and the country's better for it. And I think you got him in that position over the last 24 hours. Whether it's going to go beyond 24 hours, I don't know.
Well, we hope these rules will be lasting and will make a significant difference over the course of future history here, for sure. And we think that will absolutely change the way things are done in Washington, D.C. But let me say this too. Some people have said, well, you have irreparably harmed and weakened the office of the speaker. With all due respect, the speaker has the same, you know, it's the same constituents. So we all have the same 750,000 voters. He's got an election certificate just like I do. The guy or the person, the gal, whoever the speaker is not king. They are speaker, and they are accountable to the American people, and they are accountable to the members. But here's what really did happen. First of all, members have more ability to represent their districts, and I think that's good for Joe Lunchbox, who's out there working hard every day and sends his representative to Washington, D.C. No more of these Gang of Eight bills, right? Or, you know, who are these 8 people that run the country, right? Right? We all want to have a part in that. And Ken, this is really important. We have given Kevin McCarthy the tools, if he's willing to use them, to potentially make him the most successful speaker in modern history. He's got to be willing to use them.
I was thinking about that. And he can do it. And it's weird because by the 11th or 12th vote, I watched it all live. And again, it's more exciting to me than the Super Bowl, because this to me is more movement than we've had in a year. What took place in the last 72 hours, and seeing people like yourself be heard and be able to do things for the American people without all this petty stuff, like the individual bill thing. You know, making it. I don't think people realize the scam when you have a bill called you know, Make Children Great, and then in the bill you have to have a plastic car, and you have to have more ethanol in the gas. It's like, what the hell are you talking about? Then if you vote against it, people say, well, you don't care about the children. So you totally got rid of that scam. And I noticed today, and I want to ask you this, I don't know what you just voted on, but I know right before you went to vote, it looks like Kevin McCarthy made my week by getting Swalwell, Adam Schiff, and Ilhan bye-bye off the committees. Now, tell me about that.
Well, that's exactly right. So 2 of the bills we just voted for, one is on the China committee, the Chinese influence and destruction of the planet. We want to take a look at that. We're serious about it. The Democrats have never wanted to help, so we just passed that. The one I'm really excited about, and I'm excited about that one, but the one I worked really, really hard for in this whole negotiation is called the weaponization of the federal government. So if you're looking for an acronym, Ken, that's WTFG. And that's going to go after the deep state, you know, whether it's the Biden administration collaborating with the National School Board Association to go after parents and intimidate them to not go to their school and complain about their daughter being raped, or whether it's the federal government and the FBI colluding with Facebook and Twitter to censor Ken Matthews and people that want to talk about what's happening in their lives, in their community, and their health and their government. That's incredibly impactful. The Democrats are so scared of that because they don't want the lid ripped off of the deep state that they're using to oppress American freedoms. And also, these people, Adam Schiff, Eric Swalwell, and Ilhan Omar, who should not serve on committees, they have not earned the right. And, one, certainly a prolific liar. The other one, essentially working with the Chinese government to spy on America. I mean, there's got to be an accountability here. Americans are tired of no accountability on one side of the ledger, this two-tier justice system where people that are connected can do anything, and the people that don't know anybody or don't vote the right way or say the wrong things are persecuted under the federal government. That's an indicator that things are changing in Washington, D.C., and it's a great message for the American people to hear.
Now, I also saw there's some action on vaccine origin, and I'm sorry,
yes.
COVID origin investigation.
Yes.
Is that right? Does that have traction? Is that happening?
Does have. No, that does have traction. That'll happen in the Oversight Committee. Look, we want to get to the things that Ken Matthews isn't allowed to talk about on network radio, right?
Well, that's the truth,
right? We all want to know what happened. And just because China doesn't want to hear about it, and just because Big Pharma doesn't want to hear about it, doesn't mean the American people don't want to hear about it. Remember, Washington, D.C. is supposed to work for the little guy, not Washington, D.C. So, we want to find out. We want to get to it. We want to know what Fauci knew. Yeah.
You mentioned Big Pharma. Big Pharma, they just had a report now. It's come out. They have proof and testimony that they went to Twitter. One of the Pfizer people went to Twitter and said, you've got to knock all this talk off about natural immunity. Because if you keep saying that young, healthy people don't even need the vaccine, if they're healthy and they don't have comorbidities, then we're not going to make, the $86 million we made in 2021. So far this year, they've made $77 billion.
Yeah,
billion last year. Yeah. So the fact that you're even talking about this is very exciting,
Yeah, but these things have to be exposed. Certainly, we believe in the modern marvels or the marvels of modern medicine. What we don't believe in is being used as guinea pigs so that a few corporations can get fabulously wealthy using the power and the influence of the health agencies and the federal government to force us to do things with our body that are unacceptable and unwanted. We want to return to things like the Nuremberg codes where we're in charge of our bodies. And if we want the vaccine, God bless you. If you don't want the vaccine, God bless you. This is America, and we shouldn't be forced to do these things, especially, Ken, as you know, without valid research. So we need to be able to have an open conversation. And look, the town square is not just the town square anymore. The town square is Facebook, it's Twitter, and it's all the other social media platforms. And to be censored on them and to have the government collude with them in favor of Big Pharma is really, really concerning.
Oh, yeah.
And it cannot be allowed to continue.
I'm still banned off Facebook, and of course I got kicked off LinkedIn, and I just got another strike on YouTube last week. And so I can relate to that. But as we're discussing this, I was thinking, just in my pile of preparation today, I found 4 states, including Pennsylvania, that are mandating mask wearing for students returning to school after the Christmas break. I can't even wrap my head around. Of course, New York is one, California, Pennsylvania, and there's others. And hopefully, regarding the vaccine, I was thrilled that they voted against the mandate for the vaccine for the military, but will there be an effort to reinstate these men and women that were kicked out because of it?
Well, that was my demand as a guy who wore the uniform.
I remember that.
For 30 years. And look, I've gotten every vaccine the military had to offer until I got out. But again, when it's not proven, when you're forcing people in the military, the healthiest population segment of our entire United States population, to take an experimental drug or lose their job. And these are people that have signed up to give everything, including their last full measure for the idea of America. It is unacceptable. And so these people must be reinstated. this repeal of the policy is a shadow of what it should be. We should have gotten much more. We should have fought for much more. And I'm not going to rest until that happens, Ken. And you can imagine that's my sentiment. That's my sentiment on it. It is unbelievable what we have forced on the American people on an experimental drug. And look, we know that the reporting isn't accurate on this. We don't know the outcomes of these long-term outcomes of vaccinations. We don't know the long-term outcomes for children. This is very, very dangerous. And to just accept this lockstep and have the government, the force of government, whether you can go to work or what have you. Again, for these school districts that are requiring masking, tell me what science you're using to justify the taking away of my civil rights to not cover my face. Tell me what science you're using. I would love to see it.
Well, there is. I was thinking about the whole vaccine thing and how much already evidence there is, and so much of it has come across the floor of both the House and the Senate in testimony. Whether it's Dr. Peter McCullough, Dr. Robert Malone, and people ask me, well, where do you find all this stuff? Well, you have to go to C-SPAN because mainstream won't cover it. They won't touch it.
It's censored off of social media, and you're right. You have to go look for it.
But it made it to the Capitol. It made it all the way to Washington, and then it stopped.
Right.
They showed you the evidence, and then it just stopped at Washington.
Yeah. Wake up, America. Somebody might be lying to you. Other than, look, everybody needs to listen to Ken Matthews and quit listening to Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and whatever else. Then maybe there'd be a shred of truth. At least you'd have an objective opinion where you could weigh both sides. But right now, all you're doing is being force-fed the propaganda of essentially what is evolving into a police state. This is our country.
And there's no reason we can't. One of my slug lines, Congressman, is we have fun getting to the truth 7 days a week, because as well as I do, and your chief and your team, if you didn't have a sense of humor over the last several years, your head would have just exploded right off your torso. We all know that.
Yeah, that's true.
So that's something we do 7 days a week. And I was excited as I followed the vote Friday night. I was able to have video of it and commentary Saturday morning and Saturday afternoon. And it's amazing that desert of information between Friday night and Monday, when all the media gets their narrative straight and they line up all the puppets on Sunday morning, and almost everything we talked about and some of my fellow citizen journalists online talked about Saturday and Sunday, they were all regurgitating it Monday. And I think the biggest misconception by the left media, they saw this as a hit or a weakness for the GOP. I think the GOP is stronger now than it was a month ago. And I think because you have a majority, and Kevin is going to be on his best behavior. Excuse me. I meant to say the speaker. I don't mean any disrespect. I only disrespect him on my show. I'm not going to do it next to a congressman. So now that Speaker McCarthy's on his best behavior, I think there's a real chance to get a lot of things done for everyone in the country, not just the elites.
This place, Washington, D.C. is supposed to work for the little guy out there that's struggling to make the electricity bills and the mortgage payments and put gasoline in the tank and pay $5 for a dozen eggs. That's who this place is supposed to work for. And for too long, it has worked for this town and the people that live around here and buy and sell and curry favor in Washington, D.C. It had to end. And somebody had to step up and do it. And that's those 20 brave souls that stood against, quite honestly, Ken, as you know this, a lot of conservative media, suddenly were against these folks. I mean,
I know.
When Senator McConnell was elected leader, everybody was saying, oh, why would you do this? Your people are crazy. And then as soon as the guy that's been 14 years in leadership, and in the House of Representatives, they said, well, this guy's the only salvation for the country. It doesn't make any sense to me, but we know Washington's broken. Everybody knows it. Somebody had to step in and do something, and that's what we did. And I think we are going to be much stronger going forward. Ken, we could have fought for 4 days. and then have the rest of the 2 years to work together and do something, or we could have just fought for 2 years disagreeing with one another because we didn't sort things out. It's better to get through those 4 days, sort things out, and then go for the 2 years united, pushing back the left and the Joe Biden crazy agenda. And that's what we're going to do.
And for people just tuning in, this is Pennsylvania Congressman Scott Perry, the chairman of the Congressional Freedom Caucus. Do you feel that the Freedom Caucus is now more energized? And I know they've always been united, but I think this is a win even for the people that held out to the end. I still think the Freedom Caucus was able to say, look, when we demand things for the American people, you're going to listen.
Yeah, look, the people that held out to the end, there are my brothers and sisters. They are patriots. They are change agents, and their cause is righteous and just. The Freedom Caucus knows that, and the members know that this is just the beginning of the fight. We set the conditions. We now have the tools, but you got to go use the tools out on the playing field or on the battlefield, if you will, to affect these changes. You can't just sit back now and say, well, we did our work and that was tough. And no, now we got 2 years to show the American people how it will work in their favor, and use these tools that we've worked hard to get, and show, not only the American people, but quite honestly, the rest of the federal government, you're not running things here. The American people are.
Now, what is your top priority for in our neck of the woods, in your district? What would you tell your district? What is your top priority? There's so many between the border and everything else.
Yeah, well, first of all, we want to make sure that this inflationary pressure that's putting everybody's economic circumstances in peril, we want to end that. And the way you stop that is by stopping the Senate and, quite honestly, some members in the House from just flooding the economy with this unaccounted for cash, right? They just keep on pouring gasoline on the inflation fire. We got people that are happy to work, that are good, God-fearing citizens that want to play by the rules and pay their taxes, but they can't afford things. So that's probably number one on my list. The other thing is with the borders connected is our economic, but also just our health security. Ken, as you know, I think we had 5,400 fentanyl deaths in Pennsylvania. The border's far away, but our citizens are dying from this poisoning coming from China illegally across the Mexican border. If Joe Biden won't do anything about it, I sure want to. We're going to have to use the leverage we have to make sure that happens. And so, whether it's economic security, the border, or just regular fiscal constraint, these are things that are important to the people of South Central Pennsylvania. They just want to live their lives and have the opportunities that America provides and not be badgered by the federal government. And those are going to be my priorities.
Fentanyl, the tentacles of fentanyl have reached so far into, the interior of this country. And now, I guess as of a month ago, the number one killer of 18 to 45-year-olds. So that's this huge portion of the future of our country. The number one killer is something that is being allowed to continually pour over a border, which we all saw the Kabuki Theater after 26 months. Joe Biden showed up on a Sunday after they scrubbed all the streets and swept the sidewalks and got everybody out of there.
Right. Yeah, it's look, this is a puppet show. The American people are sick of it. I know the border is thousands of miles away from Pennsylvania, but it comes to Pennsylvania in the form of people here illegally with crime activity, gang activity associated with the cartels in Mexico, of course, the drug activity. Look, there were 20 years and we had half the casualties in Vietnam. Why is this not an American outrage? Why are we not demanding accountability from a president who turns a deaf ear, who's tone deaf to the citizens that he's supposed to support, the border that he's supposed to defend? Why are we accepting that? I'm not going to, and we're going to try and make sure that this Congress sends a message through funding bills that say, we've had enough. You can say, you, President Biden, you, Secretary Mayorkas, that the border's secure. We know it's not, and now we're going to force you to secure it or else.
One more question, because I know you got to run, and I appreciate your time. Hopefully I can have you on again, Congressman.
Absolutely.
We'll see how this plays back. If it's all distorted and whatever.
Yeah, right. We'll have to do it again.
I may have to drive into the DC with my phone. People that are concerned about the January 6th issue, and the misconceptions and the misreporting. Now we're finding out, I heard the president the day before yesterday, President Trump, mentioned two things that kind of surprised me. He mentioned Ray Epps and his involvement in that. He mentioned the investigation. But what do you tell people who are still wondering why we still have men and women in jail that haven't been charged yet?
Yeah.
Which is so un-American, let alone unconstitutional. I think people I think they put it out of their mind. There's been people in jail for 2 years.
Well, look, before it hasn't really been safe to discuss this. We shouldn't have political prisoners in the United States of America. It's unacceptable. And now we finally have a chance to find some justice for all the American people, which includes getting questions answered about the lost tapes that we're not allowed to see, what Nancy Pelosi knew as the head of security, so to speak, in the Capitol leading up to January 6th. There hasn't been a chance for 2 years, Ken, and the left and their complicit propaganda arm, the mainstream media, have beaten everybody into submission where they think they're not even allowed to discuss it. You can't even ask the question. That time is now past. Now we can ask the questions. We can find the truth. The truth needs to lead wherever it needs to lead, and we need to take. We need to deal with whatever that is. But we have to demand the truth and not just the propaganda of partisan left-wing Democrats that used a horrific circumstance in the United States of America on one day to persecute its political enemies. That is not acceptable. That's something out of the third world, and that time is now over.
Well, I hope that you and the rest of the Congress and others in Washington, D.C. will address categorizing the cartels as a terrorist organization. Because until we get the full force of law enforcement and military targeted on the cartels, I'm just tired of being called an insurrectionist and a nationalist and a right-wing gun owner and a religious nut and all the things that half of America gets called on a regular basis. And yet we can't get our own president now, Joe Biden, to say, those cartels are pretty bad. Maybe we should shut them down. So hopefully that's in your bag of tricks there as far as presentation.
Border security is really important. That $1.7 trillion bill spent a bunch of American taxpayer money on borders in Morocco and Egypt, but literally said we can't use any of this money to secure our own border in the United States of America. It's over, Ken. That's got to be done, or look, it just has to be done, or we're going to have more trouble here. That's just how it is. There's a reason that people elected Republicans. Republicans need to live up to it and inspire America by doing the things that the average citizen wants to see done.
Well, thank you again, Congressman Scott Perry, Chairman of the Congressional Freedom Caucus. Thanks again for taking time. I look forward to the next visit. And thanks for giving me one of the most exciting first weeks of a new Congress in history. I think history is going to be made.